more people. I see some new faces. You brought your colleague. You're, is this your first time, right?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Mohamed Lukman.
Mohamed Arshad.
Actually, his brother, Arshad's brother.
Oh, okay. Are you at Mindtree as well?
No, I'm not mind.
You're also like a developer?
No, just a fresh graduate.
Oh.
Seeking for an opportunity here.
Oh, nice. You're at the right place. Okay. Okay. My voice. First time, right?
Yeah.
What's your name?
No, we cannot. His brother. Sure.
You cannot. Oh my god, it's so weird hearing my voice. You can't see my screen, but I'm in the call. What do you mean? There. You're at the right place. Can you mute my voice? Okay.
Which one is good?
Okay. My voice.
Oh, my phone.
Multiple devices at the same time.
Okay.
Oh,
It's fine if they
your
can't see my screen. That
is
doesn't
not
matter.
presented, but your
But they can see the screen of the presenter?
yes.
Okay, that's what matters. Okay, we'll get started because we're a bit behind time. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Fatma. For those of you who are been here for a while, you probably are sick of this introduction. Welcome to the Azure Qatar community session. We should keep track of like what session this is, like the serial number. But welcome to another session. I see some new faces here, so I'm just going to reintroduce what this community is all about. This is a community of anyone that's interested in learning more about Azure Microsoft products, whether it's Azure or even like BizApps. Last time we had a session all about like Purview, our security offerings. And it's also open for anyone in the community that wants to speak about how the projects that they're working on or some frameworks. So, for instance, today we have folks from Mindtree, right? This who are one of our partners. We're going to discuss all about cloud adoption framework. So, who attended the session about cloud adoption framework a few, I think, like 3 weeks ago, right? Some of you guys. So this is sort of like a continuation on that, just digging deeper into those components. Probably the team is gonna refresh people's memory around it, especially for those who weren't there. But I just want to do a couple of announcements. See here. In case you're not already on our LinkedIn or WhatsApp group, you can take a picture of this and join our community. That's where we keep you guys updated on everything that's coming new. So make sure that you join the LinkedIn and WhatsApp community, and we're always like open to feedback. So myself and Fateh and Sarmad over there, we're part of the organizing team. So feel free to pitch your ideas to us. And also Microsoft Build just started yesterday. So it's a week-long event it's our developer conference. There's a lot of exciting announcements that came out. So if you're interested to know about, like, we have our book of news, which summarizes all the updates. You can take a picture of this and understand what are all the new updates that are around our products, whether it's Copilot Studio, Azure, and more. And we also, if you just go to the build.microsoft.com platform, there's tons of sessions that free you can attend by our product and engineering team, diving deeper into these concepts. You can watch them live, you can watch them on demand. Just make an account and you can go ahead. There's tons of exciting sessions that you could attend. We also do job shout outs for people who are looking for opportunities and people who are hiring as well. I haven't received any more specific, but I'm just going to repeat the ones that were shared last time. So there's 2 opportunities. One for like someone who's familiar with like E5 and security licenses. We're looking for more than like 5-6 years of experience who's interested to work in a bank. There's a bank that's hiring. You can reach out to us. And there's also an opportunity for an AI solution architect at like a up and coming startup. So we posted the details of that in the chat. So if you're interested, you can reach out. So if you have any opportunities or if you're someone that wants to like pitch yourself in this forum, you just let us know before the session so that we could give you this platform. Any questions around this or anything so far? Okay. So I'll hand it over to the team here. They're going to discuss all about what does CAF stand for. Let me make sure that you guys remember. cloud adoption framework. So we're going to dive deeper into the plan and adopt phase. And we have Abdul Rehman and Mohamed here. They are very seasoned architects in the field. They've been around for more than Yes, they've been around for more than 18 plus years working in this field. So try to absorb as much knowledge from them, ask questions, and also pay attention because, as usual, we're gonna ask you guys questions at the end, and you get an opportunity to win Microsoft mugs at the end. But the ones who won last time, they can't win again. You won last time, right? Yeah, so you can't pick on them. So yeah, I'm gonna hand it over to Muhammad and Abdurrahman.
Thank you,
You can
Fatima.
share your screen and then you can get started.
It's shared over.
I stole share. So you can just reshare and then we can get started. Any questions until we get around that? We all good? Okay. On to you.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good evening and welcome to the session. So, today's session, as you can see, it's all about the continuation of Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. This is basically what we did last time. We went through all the different phases of Cloud Adoption Framework. I'm going to talk about it. What are those different phases that we talked about last time? And then we are going to deep dive into two of the phases, which is the planning and the adoption phase. Yeah. So to begin with, introduction about myself. So, of course, you can see my name, Abdul Rehman, and I have 18 plus years of experience in IT. I've worked across several products of Microsoft. I started my career with Microsoft Outlook and Exchange. Then I moved on to Skype. I also worked with Teams and audio codes, if you are aware of telephony, and then moved on to the Azure. Right. So that's about me and my colleague
Hi
Arshad.
everyone. So this is Arshad, and as you see, I have 12 plus years of experience in the IT industry, and I have worked for Azure, implementing various cloud solutions, and also specifically working for assessment and migration. We have worked for various assessment and migration projects. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Arshad.
One question.
Yeah.
Did you share your screen inside the Teams or from the extended?
I think I did the second screen. 1 second, let me try again. Sharing. Share.
Share again.
The second screen I'm sharing, that's the screen I'm sharing. And then that's where the presentation is going, right? I start the presentation. Is it showing up? Is that the right screen? Yes. Okay.
Wait a second.
Okay. All right. So, like I mentioned before, start of the session, this is all about the cloud adoption framework. So, this is the agenda for the day. See, we have broken down the planning and adoption phase, based on the details of what we're going to cover up today. And then finally, we'll have a question session. So, if any clarifications, anything you want to ask, feel free. So, these are the different phases of the cloud adoption framework that my colleague Qasim and we spoke about it last time. So, can anybody tell me what is cloud adoption framework? Any basics? Even if you have not attended the previous session, but out of your experience, knowledge, can somebody talk about what is it basically?
Basically, to move to the cloud,
Mhm.
what all things needs to be taken care,
Right.
the strategy part, planning part, and then how do we migrate? What security do we need?
This is so cloud option framework is basically a set of guidelines, documented by Microsoft based on the experience. It tells you, how you can start your journey to cloud. What are the factors to consider? What are the steps involved? How to plan and how to migrate, right? And at the end of it, how to what are the governance parameters to look at, right? So it's a whole. It talks about the entire journey. Any organization that wants to move to cloud, they can follow the guidelines. It's not a hard and fast rule that you have to follow it as it is, but then it helps you. It helps your organization with the guidelines. A starting point. You may be in. You could be probably at a readiness phase. You could be at adoption phase, or you would have probably moved to Azure, and now you hear about cloud option framework, and you can start at any phase. And just start following the guidelines. Right. So today we are going to focus mainly on the planning phase and the adoption phase. Right. So last time, I tried to give an example actually. So in case you want to relocate your house, you want to move from one house to another, right? You will not simply move, right? There's certain what are the things you would take care of first? Anyone? Maybe? Sort of packing. You want to pack stuff, okay?
Plan about which location I have to
Right.
live or
You need to plan where you have to move, right?
Destination.
The destination, right? How will I move? And how you are going to move. What are the items you're going to pack? Whether you're going to take everything or you're going to discard certain items, right?
The resources now will be secured.
Exactly. So think of it like Azure migration in a similar fashion. See, you look at your inventory. You plan. What do you have currently in your organization? What are the set of servers you have? What are the databases? Uh, Basically, your inventory, right? And then you assess whether I can take everything or whether I have to leave certain things behind due to certain restrictions, whether I need to follow certain guidelines of, for example, data residency, right? Certain organizations, they cannot go beyond the country they are in due to certain restrictions. So all those planning, right? So you assess your existing environment, you plan for the target environment, you set up your target environment, as in you complete your agreement. Yeah, that's weird to hear your own voice. All right. So then you plan your target, right? You finish your agreement, rental agreement. You pay the rent. You go. You probably want to buy the new furnitures, or maybe you want to take your own furniture. You arrange for a transport company who can do the lift and shift for you. Yeah, something similar. So trying to keep it in very layman terms. Uh, you can also imagine Azure migration in a similar way. Okay, to keep it simple. So today we are going to discuss the same thing, but for Azure. We're not going to actually relocate the house, but yeah, something similar. So see now, I'm just picking the plan phase now, right? We'll deep dive only into the planning phase now. Okay. So what is the plan phase all about? It is about discovering your assets and assessing those assets to see how they best fit into the target environment, right? To the target cloud environment. Now, okay, I'll just skip and move to the next slide, and we'll deep dive into it first. So when I talk about digital estate, what are the ways I can uh, inventory my assets, or what are the ways uh, I can understand what my assets are, right? One is for Azure, you have a tool-based assessment, right? So on-premise, you have, let's say, for example, you have 100 servers, you have Hyper-V, you have VMware, right? And then you may have physical servers, right? Now, uh, you need to scan those servers. You need to identify what is the configuration of my server, right? For example, the hardware details, what is the performance, the usage, what is the storage, and what are the network dependencies, right? What are the incoming and outgoing traffic of those servers? Basically, that will tell you your network dependencies. So all that information we can capture using a tool, right? And but there are certain things, for example, a tool cannot capture. Tool is not the ultimate solution for any migration. Okay, tool can give you maybe a portion of it. It can help you with certain portion, right? But then now let me give you an example, right? For example, I have an application uh, which is running on 4 servers, okay, and it has uh, 4 backend databases, a SQL. It is running. It has a front end and back end. I have 2 data centers, right? So 2 servers in 2 application servers in each data center and 2 databases in each data center. Now the tool will not be able to give you this information, right? It cannot tell you which data center does this server belong to, right? That is where, and on top of that, for example, what are my application URLs? How do I access my application? See, applications are accessed. Of course, there should be certain DNS context, right? You access it via certain DNS URLs. So all this information. On top of that, one more example I can give you. For example, if there are certain hardware devices that connect to my application, and whether these devices are hard coded, for certain reasons, maybe these are legacy hardware devices, and they may not be smart enough, and then you hard code the IP address. For example, to connect to your application from those devices, you put in IP addresses manually, right? Now, imagine when you migrate, those systems will fail. Why? Because these are hard coded IP addresses. And how do you, tool will not be able to tell you all this information right away, right? So you have to go and change those IP addresses there, right? So this information, for that purpose, what we do a manual assessment there, right? So the assessment, if when you do any sort of migration, is 2 phase. One is automated assessment that scans your server. Other one is you actually talk to the application owner. He knows the application better than you. I mean, in terms I'm talking, if you're not the application owner, if you are from the IT, from the IT side, and you want to migrate certain applications. So this is where the manual assessment would help. You will have workshops with the application team. You will interview them. You will of course share a set of questionnaire with them initially. I'm going to talk about it in later slides. Just sample of a few questions what we ask that will give you certain context around the application, right? So there are 2 phases that we have to look at. And what do we achieve out of this, right? Based on these two information that we collect, one is the hardware configuration details, the server details. The next outcome would be whether you can assess whether my servers are suitable for the cloud. Tool can tell you, for example, if you are running an outdated operating system, right? Tool can give you that information. And then, it can also tell you whether or not, for example, if you're running IIS on a server, the tool can suggest you can modernize this. You can go to the web apps, basically. And similarly, if you're running SQL, the tool may suggest, of course, you have to run certain assessment, but then there can be options where you can identify whether or not I can go to SQL, Azure SQL, right? For an example, whether you can modernize and go to past services. Yeah. And see, based on these two outcomes, you can define your approach, how you want to migrate. You can define your target infrastructure, what it would look like, what is the target sizing you can do, right? And then you can execute your plan. Now, there are a couple of approaches actually in terms of migrating, right? One is you move everything as is, right? Which is the least complex and less, what do you say, not much changes required, and very simple and very easy, I would say. That is the rehost, which is the lift and shift migration. So what is lift and shift? It is nothing but take the sofa and deliver it to the next house, to the new place. So that is, take your server as is and replicate to Azure and have the same configuration. Everything would be same. Okay, of course, your network dependencies and IP address would change, but then you will take care of those requirements. So very minimal changes needed in case of rehost. And this is the approach that we are going to target today, the rehost approach. The other ones, for example, the refactor, re-architect, rebuild, and replace. See, these approaches require changes in the architecture of your application. Or it means that, instead of going to a VM to VM migration, you may have to refactor, you may have to go to PaaS services, right? That means you're changing your the way you are managing things, or the way your application is running, or way your databases are running, right? So we are not going to deep dive much into the other ones because that requires much more time, much more discussions around how to do that. Okay, we are going to focus on the rehost one, which is the most common approach people take, or organizations take, basically. Okay. Any questions so far? Anyone?
It's called we mentioned much.
Sorry.
Two used for this.
Yeah, we are going to discuss about this further, but I'm going to target rehost, so that's what I was focusing on. Yeah. So now I said tool-based assessment, right? Now, which tool to use? Now, let me tell you, there are many tools available in the market. Okay. Third-party tools, of course, non-Microsoft tools also. But then Microsoft has its own offering as well, which is the Azure Migrate tool, which can do the assessment for you. Okay. And I think it does a good job. It captures the information that is helpful for the assessment and for the migration. Yeah. And what can you do with this tool? You can do a discovery, you can do the assessment, and you can also migrate. So it is an end-to-end solution actually, if you plan to use Azure Migrate. Yeah. Secondly, it helps you migrate and modernize infrastructure. You can also migrate to VDIs. You can, if you are into containers, yeah, you can also migrate your application into containers. The tool has that option. You can also modernize to PaaS services with the Azure Migrate tool. And the tool tells you, after you have done the assessment, the tool will give you the target sizing, like what sizing to take, whether you decide to go with the performance based analysis or whether you decide to go with the as is approach. We are going to talk about that. So the tool gives you cost estimates of your target environment before you even migrate, so you can take the right decisions. Okay, so overall, 1 second, sorry, I just want to show you the I'll just expand this and show you how it looks like. This one, Azure Migrate first. See, this is the dashboard of Azure Migrate. It's available on the Azure portal. When you go to portal.azure.com, you type Azure Migrate service. This is how the dashboard looks like. So over here, you can see, depending upon your migration goal, you can begin your journey for assessment. And of course, once you have done the assessment, you can move on with the migration activities. Okay. The next one. And this is what the data looks like once you have done the initial discovery. Right? If you see here, the discovery is completed. So we have like 21,388 servers identified. How you see the distribution of operating system. You identify how many web servers, how many servers are running SQL. And of course, when you create the assessment, we'll talk about this. We'll try and complete a demo if possible today, if the time permits. And then what are the appliances used? So it's like a summary, but then you can click on it and deep dive further into, to gather more detailed information. You can get inside it and get more details. And this is how the readiness data looks like, where you have the Azure readiness, how many servers are ready for migration to Azure, and then how many can be migrated with certain conditions. Then you have your monthly cost estimates, your storage cost estimates as well. Okay. This is the one, right? Next. Yeah. Now, see, overall, what are the different stages of an assessment? See, if you understand this, you understand the entire assessment process as a whole. Okay. So now to begin with, if you notice on top, you have Azure Migrate setup, which is your tool setup. See, there are two things we talked about, right? Tool-based assessment and then manual assessment. Tool-based assessment is, I'm going to use Azure, Azure Migrate. For manual assessment, I'm going to use the workshop, of course. Okay, I'm going to schedule workshops with the application teams to talk to them to understand. But before I do that, see, these are parallel activities that go hand in hand. Okay, So to begin the workshop, let's say, for example, Lukman here, he is the application owner. He manages one application that needs to be migrated to Azure cloud. Okay. I will have to ask him certain basic questions first before even I start a conversation with him, right? So I'll send him a template. There are certain templates. I mean, of course, depending on the different organization, you can prepare that. I'll send him certain basic questions. Tell me the list of your servers. What are the list of servers? How many application servers you have? How many database servers you have? Right? How many web servers you have? Give me the server names and give me the IP addresses. I'll just send him a basic template initially. What does that give me? That gives me the inventory to scan to begin with, right? Um, and then of course I can add on more about the application, but this is the very basic information I need from him because he's the one who's managing the application. Yes.
To scan, do you need to install an agent on all the server?
No, not required.
You just get this from the inventory?
Yeah. So this is just get the inventory, or if you have CMDB, right? Almost every organization has the CMDB, right? You pull the data from the CMDB, you get your server list, you get the application names, you get the server names and IP addresses, right? So you begin from there. Yes. But you have certain prerequisites, meaning I'll talk in the next slide. What is the architecture looks like? How does the scanning? What are the port requirements?
Time that we wanted to do the investment in organization,
Mm.
and the consultant or the vendor we're working with gave us two agents. One was on the master server, and the other one was the other server that we
What
wanted.
tool was it?
Let me ask.
Not Azure, right? Migrate.
Azure, yeah, it's Azure.
Azure Migrate.
Yeah, sure.
Are you talking? Okay, now see, the agents are required, but for migration, for assessment, you can also do it without the agent. Agent is also required in assessment, but in case you want to do additional dependency analysis.
Database, so
But without, for database, of course, but you can actually do the assessment even without an agent. So this is all agentless I'm talking about right now. I'm going to talk about the architecture next. That will tell you how many appliances and how it is placed in the organization. Okay. So like I said, I'll capture the inventory first. I'll get the inventory. I'll feed that data. Now this is where the information starts. I'm just taking an example of one application. People will do this for thousands of applications, depending on how many they have in their organization. Yeah. So I take the data, I initiate the discovery. Okay. What this tool will do, like I said, it captures server configuration data. What is server configuration data? Your hardware details about the servers, your computer name, IP address, your operating system version, operating system details, then your how many drives you have, hardware configuration details, how many drives you have, and then it can also tell you list of softwares installed, right? So on and so forth. Now, this discovery data can also have, of course, dependency details are also there, like what are the incoming and outgoing traffic on the server, what are my dependencies, which applications my application is talking to, or what are the outbound connections, what are the inbound connections. It will capture on the from the server. Yeah. And then based on this data that I have collected, this is the raw data. This is the discovery data. This will not give you any, I mean, this is just there, but then you need to analyze it. You need to make some sense out of it, right? That is where you do an assessment. And that is again a step in the Azure portal. It's part of the Azure Migrate tool. Once you have done the assessment, you wait there. Okay, you keep that data as is. Now, then you complete the second part. You complete all your questions, completely understand the application requirements, application architecture with the application team. Application team will give you more insights. When is the peak performance? Maybe you've completed your scan, you've got your performance utilization data, but you didn't scan it during the peak utilization. Then you may not know, right? Maybe for you, everything is normal on the server. There is no challenge, right? It's only 20% utilization when I scan the server, but that's not the real information, right? Now, half information has to come from the application side. So the application team can give me those details. So once you have those ifs and buts, like, what are the pros and cons, or what are the important aspects I need to look at for the application? What are the important locations the application is supposed to be accessible? Yeah. Sometimes, your traffic ends on load balancer, for an example. My server will not see that information. In that case, you are missing a very critical component, right? That means you migrate based on saying that I did Azure migrate. Azure migrate scanned my servers. It gave me inbound and outbound connections. But then once you go to Azure, you don't know what all locations it is supposed to come from because your traffic was terminating at load balancer. And what traffic you see on the server is your load balancer IP. So again, application team helps me. They will tell me which buildings, which remote offices am I supposed to allow the connections from. They may have certain documentations with them that can add on top to what I have discovered. Some basic connectivity. I can add it to what I have captured. And that finally gives you do the analysis. This is completely manual based. You pick the data from the workshop, you pick the data from the tool, you do a manual analysis, you prepare your reports manually. Okay, and then you submit your final report that will go to the migration team for migration. That the migration team can now take that input and then they can plan for migration. Any questions so far? Clear? Okay.
One question.
Yeah.
So when we say we do the analysis and we submit a final report, so what kind of a report is that? Is it just an Excel-based report or?
Now this can be an Excel-based. It can be a Word document. It can also be a PPT. It totally depends on how you want to present it. But then the data that goes in is your application details. Yeah, you can introduce. It's like you introduce your application. What is the name of the application? What is the cost center of the application? What type of database is it using? You introduce it. And then you can define what are the application URLs for your application. Then you define what are the key connectivity requirements for your application. You highlight those key dependencies so that the network, you can take care of it. When the migration team looks at it, see, you are giving certain information to migration. Somebody who's going to move your application from on-premise to Azure, they need to know each and every detail about the application, which can cause a failure if not taken care of.
Fine, but then from when we do the analysis, so as you said that from the assessment data and the workshop data, how would I identify if that is suitable for cloud? Whether we do a refactor or a rehost, okay, whether it is suitable or not, and whether it is cost effective. Should I go with the recommendations from the tool?
Correct. See, a couple of points. For example, whether there are refactor options available or not available is given by the tool itself. Right? For example, like I mentioned, if it is IIS, it may give you, you can move this to pass, but then of course the further analysis would be required. So once you have identified in your final report, what are the different components you have and whether or not refactor options are available, right? And whether or not you can take the application to cloud, the cloud readiness as well. You can decide further. See, normally what happens is the organization would already have a strategy before you begin all these assessment plan, right? Most organizations, they would, for example, they would have decided rehost. I want to just do a rehost, meaning I don't want to do any code changes. I don't want to make any changes to my applications. Just take it as it is, right? So that means my strategy is defined already. Okay, that I want to do just a rehost, move it from on-premise and take it to Azure, right? And the cost estimates, of course, like I mentioned, this is given by the tool itself. What are my storage cost? What is my monthly cost? But in case you decide to modernize, again, you need to do a assessment again, looking at, like I showed you last time, then you can go with the relevant one. Whether you want to go for web apps, whether you want to go for databases, then you have to redo the assessment for that particular target assessment.
So the final report is basis on just the whatever
strategy we have
for the rehost.
Correct. So the final report, of course, yeah. Depending on, like I said, if you change your strategy, you can follow the relevant path. Yes.
So I understand from your point that the longer the assessment is, the better our results will be, because it will see on an average, on a daily basis, okay, the peak hours, for example, for an application, when it is what is needed. So maybe like 2 weeks at least is the best option to assess our environment?
A very good point, actually. So the point is about how long we should be running the scanning. Minimum 2 weeks. I think it's a general practice that even we have followed. Okay, but then best to run it at least for a month. At least for a month, and if possible, if you can target the peak months during those times, much better. So you get the actual usage.
So for me, yeah, the tools we used then was Azure Migrate Assistance. So we ran it directly on the server. And one thing that I observed is that it caused some resource contention. It took a lot of time before it was able to complete it. And it was able to give us whether we should use the infrastructure as service, pass service, to give us the advantage and disadvantages. So we're able to get that. So the challenge now is that which is the resource contention. Because as a database administrator, we want to make sure that at any time our database is up and running fine, the resource is okay. But making use of these tools was able to reduce the available resource for the database.
So see the point
be that because it was run directly on the server itself.
Which server?
Yeah, we installed the tools on the server and we ran it on the server.
So maybe you didn't run Azure Migrate. You were running probably another tool. I think
for the on-prem fashion.
Yeah,
because
what is that? MAP something like that. I don't remember the name. There are other tools also that can be used to assess your on-premise. You capture the on-premise data. Maybe those tools you would have run. That is more or less similar, but then
DM, I think DM.
For database, for DMS.
It will give the roadmap
For assessment. Yeah, exactly.
That is what I use.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the discovery architecture. So previously we talked about what is the entire process for the assessment from start to finish. What are the different stages we take? Now to do the scanning, we want to install the tool. So your question was agentless, right? Yeah. So you need, the first scenario is about Hyper-V. So if you want to scan your Hyper-V virtual machines, what can you do? You can install a VM on the Hyper-V itself. A separate VM, a new VM on the Hyper-V. Okay. And then you can set up that as a discovery appliance. Okay. How it would work is you need to open the port from your VM that you have installed on the Hyper-V. From that VM to your Hyper-V host, it has to be, you have to allow port 5985, WinRM port. So it will query that VM will query the Hyper-V host and gather up the information about all the VMs running on that Hyper-V host, and then it will give you the discovery data. That is scenario one. Okay, and that is the appliance that sits in between the on-prem servers and the Azure Migrate service. So this is the one which orchestrates all the metadata information. It will replicate all the metadata information from your on-prem servers to the Azure Migrate service, and that's how it is replicated. Okay. Now the second scenario is about VMware. VMware also similar. You can put a VM virtual machine on the VMware host. Okay, but that requires port 443 to the vCenter server, the ESXi host. Okay, the port is different here because the other one it's a Microsoft product, right? So it's a Windows itself. So you do 5985. Here you can connect to the vSphere APIs, VMware APIs basically. See, right side is same, okay, that it does not change. Right portion is the same. It gets the information, the appliance gets the information and will replicate that data to Azure Migrate service on port 443. That remains standard. But given that we have different types of systems available with us, then the requirements would change. Lastly, for physical servers, here it will talk directly to, see the first two cases, it is not talking directly to the VMs. See, this is the difference we need to understand in discovery. The first two scenarios, the appliance is not connecting directly to the virtual machines, meaning your application servers directly or the database servers directly. First two scenarios. But the second scenario, it is it's reaching out. Oh, sorry, the third scenario, it's reaching out to the application servers directly. So if it is Windows, it will of course use the Windows Power remoting, which is 5985. And then for Linux, it will use SSH 22.
unable to access it directly.
It's not that it's unable to, but then it uses the underlying hypervisor, the APIs of the hypervisor itself, for example, to capture the information. You require local admin permissions on the hypervisor host as well as the VMs. Account permissions is needed, but then you don't need to reach out to the VMs directly, because the hypervisor will have the Hyper-V host or the VMware host will have that information. It will be able to capture that information for you. But third case is physical servers. For example, these are not it's not virtualization, right? Physical servers, or you can reach out directly. Yes. And what types of data? Okay, one is the configuration data. Second one is the performance data. Now, what is configuration data? I just gave an example earlier. Your hardware details, your software installations on the server. Then it gives you the network dependencies or whatever it for each VM. Yes, per VM. And then performance is, think about it as utilization. Utilization of anything that you can think on the server. Memory utilization, CPU utilization, storage utilization, disk IOPS I'm talking about. Utilization. That is how it is.
And this service needs to run in admin mode in order to fetch those data, right? And send it to the Azure Migrate.
Yeah. So see, there's a time limit defined. It's not that it is continuously checking on the server. It checks, it polls the server every 30 minutes for updates. It checks every 15 minutes for performance data. And likewise, there are certain time limits or duration for it to upload the data back to Azure. It differs based on different environments, different source environments. Sometimes you'll see a lag, right? For example, I just installed Azure Migrate. I don't see anything on the Azure portal yet. You have to just wait for that default time limit to expire, because everything is collected on the server. Then it is pushed across the server directly to the Azure Migrate service based on the duration defined.
Okay, is that you want to, you have application server, you have database server. You only want to access the database server.
Okay.
You don't want your other servers. You want, the sample. You don't want to expose all your servers to Azure. So in that case, what approach are you going to take?
See, in that case, one is from the infra level. See, there are two things now, okay? One is at the infra level, VM level. Whether or not you want to do a VM level assessment, that is one thing you have to decide. If you want to do a VM level, then you have to get the appliance. If you want to jump onto DMS, then that is where your DMS comes into play, the database migration service, which will do specific with SQL, scan these SQL.
And I have a question. So in case if you have a firewall, do we need to allow some firewall rules at the port 443? And
yes. That's why the port requirements are given. Yes. If you have a firewall between your appliance and the source environment as in I'm talking about the environment that you are supposed to scan, of course you need to open the firewall ports, and those are the port requirements.
Ports are bidirectional or from the appliance towards the servers?
No, unidirectional.
Unidirectional.
Yeah.
One question. So
Yes.
this hypervisor appliance, when it scans the Hyper-V host or ESXi host, will it scan all the host which is part of this, or it will scan only limited?
No. So when you set up the appliance, you will define the host details, IP address of the Hyper-V host or IP address of the vSender server. So the underlying host you define, and then using the APIs or using PowerShell remoting, the tool is able to query the host itself to get all the virtual machines running on the system.
So let's consider I want to migrate only 25% of workloads in that ESXi host, and only the limited set of data I would like to call from the hypervisor appliance to Azure Migrate. So such options we do we have, or it will
you don't.
Everything.
Then you don't feed the IP addresses.
We are feeding only ESXi host IP address, right? Not an entire application IP address.
Okay, that way. So you can discover, but I don't see there is a restriction there. You have to.
So this tool will capture all the data and.
Correct.
There is one more way. You can upload the CSV file.
That's a manual method.
That's a manual
In case you don't want to use Azure Migrate, yeah, that's a very good point actually. If you don't want to use Azure Migrate to scan, if you've already scanned it with any other tool, there is a particular CSV format. So I don't know if that option is there. I don't see it. Don't see it here. But when you go to discover items, I think that's when you will see that. I'll show you that option, wherein you can import the metadata manually. You may have scanned it with some other tool. So you just, it's a CSV data, right? Whatever you have captured in CSV, you can upload manually and then continue with the second approach. That means discovery you don't do with Azure Migrate, but you use the tool for the further steps for assessing and migration. Any questions, other questions, any other clarifications? Not in this slide. Today we are not covering that. So this is more at a VM rehost, right? Infra level. Yeah. Maybe we can plan for one.
What plan for database?
Yeah. DMS.
DMS.
Very specific, right? So, okay. So once the scanning is completed, once you have the discovery data, see, this is what it will give you the output. I didn't have much time to scan the server, so I just took a screen capture from my lab environment. Okay. So you see the server name, you see the IP address details. If you click on this, you get the software inventory. I didn't have anything on my system, so it was very fast. I did this. Then you can look at the dependency information. Then you whether or not it's a file server, whether or not it's a web app server, right? You will get all this information, core, memory, disk, all the configuration. So we talked about what data is replicated, the server configuration data, the metadata. Okay, import based, right? See, this is import based here. You can go with your CSV files and upload, and then you will see the same data. You can upload the same data in a CSV format, and then take it forward from there. Okay. Now this is how the dependency. This is for one server, okay, not for. Yes.
CSV files, you mean our data saved in CSV files?
Yes.
Other than the database?
You could have, maybe you can scan your environment with PowerShell also, right?
Other than database data?
Other than Azure Mic. No.
In case I have the data in my database.
No, this is not that.
It's
This is not database data. This is the
it's not
configuration, server configuration.
configuration files.
Yes.
Yes,
Like
got it.
whatever you see here, exactly the same data. Maybe you would have captured using some other tools or PowerShell or manual methods. And this is how the dependency looks like. So maybe my server running all. This is my server. This is the inbound connectivity. These are all the outbound connectivity. So it will give you a dependency mapping. Now, if you need more information, for example, the latency of information about the server, as an example, then you can install the agent on the server, on the target server, the server that you're scanning, not the appliance, the actual server from where you want to capture these details. And then you have to follow certain more additional steps that will give you more information about these connections. Otherwise, you don't require the agent. In general, you will have all this information captured.
So this dependency, does it give only for the environment it runs, or can it also give any external connectivity coming in?
Now it depends on how your organization is routing traffic. For an example, if my organization is not allowing the public IP to reach to the server, right? I will not see that because my scan is running on the server itself. Anything that comes into my server or goes out of my server is the only information I'm going to be able to capture with it. If my server sees the public IP of the external connection, yes, I will see the public IP. But if my organization does not allow that and restrict it at a network level, and if I only see maybe the FI IP, for example, or another kind of a load balancer IP, I will only see the LB IP. I will not see the actual IP in that case if they are not allowing. Now we captured the data, right? We discovered the raw data, the configuration details, utilization data, everything, right? Now, based on this data, the tool will help me understand what is my readiness in terms of whether or not I can migrate this server to cloud. Whether it has an operating system that has gone out of support, for an example, right? Maybe it has certain type of storage disk that is not supported for migration. And as an example, all this information will be highlighted by the tool. These are all technical details, right? it will give me, the tool will then give me sizing data. So now the assessment is of two types you can do. Whether you want to take everything as is. For example, if I have 2 CPUs and 4 GB RAM running on premise for a server, I'm giving an example. Whether you want to take it as 2 CPU and 4 GB as is, that is as is. You take whatever is there on premise, you take as is to Azure cloud. But you can also do performance based. For an example, if you ran the tool for 1 month, you captured the performance data, and then you say during this time, if the performance has been, for example, lesser than 40%, I want to go with a lesser SKU. Why do I want to go with the same configuration when there is no utilization? Right? Then in that case, you can choose the performance-based assessment. That will give you the target sizing accordingly. So whatever you define in the assessment, that is how it will give you the output as well. And then it will give you the, based on the target sizing, it will also give you what is the storage cost, what is the VM compute cost of running the VM in cloud. Yes.
So cost,
Yeah.
when it comes to cost, it will give me output of only, so because we have multiple options, right?
Right. So you have pay as you go, then you have 1 year reserve instance, you have 3 year savings plan, 3 year reserve instance saving plan, right? So multiple options are there. So it will give you those options as well.
All options.
Yeah. Depending on what you have selected.
What about the hybrid benefit? I see that it is written. So it will also give you hybrid benefit.
So if you selected, say for example, your organization may have certain discounted rates when you want to go to Azure. You can define those discounts in the assessment and then continue with that. So once the report is out, once you get the report, you will have those discounts added in those costing.
One more question.
Yeah.
What if my OS is not supported? For example, today, 2000, I have a 2012 server, and it is not supported by Microsoft. So I take that to Azure.
The last I remember, once you migrate the operating system which has gone out of support, there is something called as extended support that is provided by Microsoft. So you can still migrate it to cloud, but then you will have some time. You will still get extended updates, but you will need to, of course, move out of it as soon as possible before the actual time runs out for you, the actual support runs out. But then I need to double check on that because there are certain things that keeps changing, right? So what is the status today? We'll have to go and check on the Microsoft website whether or not Windows 2012 is supported for migration. For an example. It is still, right? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so that will give you extended support benefit. Correct. So this information from the tool that we got. Second thing is from your workshops. You get details from your interviews. You get detail about infrastructure, application, network requirements. And then based on that you can merge the two information. Like I said right before, its assessment is not just about scanning the servers. It's also about looking at what the application owner says. Yeah, he has more information basically. He has been running the application for years, so it's important to take his input. And then that is where my final report comes in, wherein I define my target compute metrics. Communication metrics is what are the firewall rules I need to deploy once I move to Azure. That is the communication metrics. Then what is the approach I'm going to take, right? The planning, the timeline, whether I'm going to migrate. If there are 100 servers that I've scanned, I have assessed whether I'm going to migrate all the 100 servers in one go, or whether I need to plan it out. The timelines have to be planned, right? Maybe in a week, I can just take 2 applications to migrate, for example. Application as in application servers. When I say application, don't consider it as I'm migrating applications. It's the virtual machines where the applications are hosted. Okay. And then you define those things, right? You define the cost comparison for the further decisions to be taken. Now, of course, this follows up with certain further discussions with management, right? You'll present the report, you'll get the approval, it's all see, basically the point is to document everything, all the aspects of your requirement. You document everything, saying that what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the risks, what are the challenges that you see out of this application. Okay, and if you want to take it to cloud, this is what you need to do. This is the target size. These are the network rules. These are the firewall rules. So everything has to be defined, and then you decide based on cost comparison whether you want to go with pay as you go 1 year. Initially, people just go with pay as you go model. Once they are on cloud, then they decide how they want to take it forward. Pay as you go is nothing but a number of hours utilized. You pay for that only. And these are some sample questions just to help you understand what kind of questions you can ask, during your workshops. See, application architecture, the first question itself, right? Like I mentioned, I would feed the data in the application tool, in the tool to scan the servers, but the tool will not know whether it's a web server. I mean, whether it is the front end, whether it is the back end. What does the placement look like, right? Maybe you know what is the software installed, whether it is IIS, whether it is database, but then still you need to understand whether it is active, the active side, whether it is the passive side, which data center it belongs to, right? So just an example, what are the integrations? Whether I have MPLS connectivity requirements for my application, whether I have a site-to-site connectivity requirement for my application. Depending on how the routing is taking place, whether or not you see those IPs on your server, that is also something you have to consider. Then performance and usage patterns, like I mentioned, maybe I'm not scanning the servers at the right time. Maybe it's not the time when the actual peak happens, right? So that information I can get from the application team, from the workshops. Whether my application is used 24/7, does it follow business hours? Is it accessible globally? Is it geo-restricted? Whether it is only accessible from Qatar region, whether it is accessible from different, what are the other different regions it's accessible from? Based on that, based on this information, sometimes you can also define in the target whether you want to go with Azure front door, right? Which is a global service. Whether you want to go with a very region specific, service. So that's all about assessment. You have completed the assessment, and the servers are ready to migrate to Azure. Any questions so far? So this was more about rehost, lift and shift. Any questions?
mentioned Hyper-V and VMware and some physical.
Physical stuff. Anything which is not Hyper-V, VMware, that is to be considered as physical.
So, say suppose if I have some IBM, like old proprietary systems like IBM AIX or HP UX, are they supported?
I would have to check if I can install the agent. If my agent is able to read the data, then I think it should work. But then we still have to look at these capability metrics.
What if Azure migrate is not supported and we're planning to migrate to Azure? How can we do that cases actually?
In that case, if you are able to do manual assessment, can you retrieve the data manually? Whether the OS is supported in Azure, those things we have to do. It's all manual assessment in that case. If you can't do tool-based assessment for all these technical details, then you have to go look for other ways. Well, you may have to go look for third-party applications, tools that support it maybe. Yeah.
At the time of scanning, my tool, it will, doing the network scanning, it will fetch the IPs and other details. But what if there is some URL based filtering which is being followed in the environment? So will the tool be able to capture that as well?
Good question. Now, see, again, like I said, it all depends on the network routing of your organization, right? If you are seeing an IP address, which is a public IP on the server in the report, you can try and do a reverse lookup and see if you are able to figure out if that has a pointer record published. But if not, this is where your manual workshop comes in. You have to get that clarification. If it's a requirement, your application owner would have that information with him. He's the right person to approach. If not him, then the next is the network team. Yeah.
And this needs to be clear out during the interview time. They need to mention those kind of requirements that they should say that we have this kind of whitelisting rules.
Correct. You can also, one thing you can also do is you can export information from your proxy. If it's visible, if your network team allows, of course, if they're part of the journey, they can help you with the dump. They will have the whitelisting details, right? Which servers are allowed for which URLs, which URLs are allowed from which servers, basically.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. So, no questions? No other questions, I mean. We are good? Yeah.
How much downtime is acceptable?
Hmm.
So for the production environments, obviously, if you want to migrate them, so we cannot have a lot of downtime. So how would we,
So depending upon your downtime, see, there are different approaches to migration that you can take. You can have, if, for example, if an application allows a few hours of downtime, you can go with a certain approach. If they don't allow it downtime at all, depending on, if your application is a tier 0 application, you can think about moving the DR side first, switching over, then you have to come up with that strategy. So you have to define a strategy for that. So to ensure that your application remains available all the time. So this is just to understand what is the business acceptable downtime, so that the migration team can then plan accordingly. Yes.
So my question, application is also relying on database. So is it possible to migrate the application to Azure and database on-prem?
Yes, as long as you can open the connectivity from Azure. Of course, see, when you want to move to Azure, you have to establish you have to have a connectivity from your on-prem data center to Azure, whether it's an express route, whether it is site to site. And then yes, you can allow connections, then it will work. We have seen such environments.
But can't we migrate the database also?
No, we are migrating, but his requirement is he doesn't want to migrate database. Yeah. He wants to keep database on premise, move to application, but you have to be very careful of the latency requirement. If your application is very latency sensitive, in that case, it's a challenge. So then you have to plan it. You have to have a strategy for that.
But think about outbound cost also. But the Azure route.
Correct. But the other way around, the database is on cloud and the application is on-prem.
Technically, it will work. But whether or not that is feasible, that as an assessment guy, you have to define, you have to identify.
That may face latency issues as well, right? When your application you have moved to cloud, but your database is still in on-prem.
Latency is the biggest concern.
Exactly. Depending on the region in which you are migrating your PM, then that will come into a picture.
So everyone is clear about assessment then? Anybody? The questions? If not, I'm assuming that I think we all have clarity now. We'll move on to the, see, there is a demo session planned, but then depending on, whether time permits, then we'll try and take the demo. But we want to move to migration, complete the migration. Still some time left, then we can do a quick assessment demo, as in walkthrough of the tool.
It's 8 p.m. So you still had 23.
How much time is there?
7:37.
Okay, half an hour now. Okay, because we also have to cover migration. So, okay. All right, thanks everyone. So I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Mohamed Arshad. He will take it over and talk about the migration approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdul Rehman, for your detailed explanation on the assessment and various scenarios that we can cover the assessment. See, basically, a successful migration heavily depends upon the quality of your initial assessment. That's what we saw here, right? Any details or any data that remains uncaptured or misinformation that we collected, especially during the manual workshop I'm talking about, tool data will definitely have, and then wherein you have to put your analysis and your strategy to move to the cloud. But then for a successful migration, your assessment is very important. Now, as a beginners, like, I mean, I can see a lot of students here and the beginners. It is very fascinating to do the migration because, it looks, it all in the portal. We have to go and then we can do that. And assessment, most of the time, or, we feel like, it is a documentation work, just capture the data and do the analysis, do the Excel works, put it into the PowerPoint or Microsoft Word. But then believe me, to be a good architect, it is very important that you do a good assessment so that you have a knowledge about the infrastructure, the digital estate, what has been talked about till now. Okay, so moving to the migration. Now we completed our assessment, right? Sticking to the same example of what we started the session with. Imagine you are running a company, you are running a bakery company, and you have a lot of kitchens, and you have servers which stores your recipes, your customer databases, your invoice application, and all. And now you're planning to move those kitchens or your appliances, your applications, your ovens in that manner, your kneading machines to a different new environment. Okay. Now that's where you had completed your assessment. Now in migration, we will talk about different types of migration and the process and the migration stages. So just keep it in the mind, the same example which we went. Is this over? Next. Right. Thanks so much. Okay, migrate. Now coming to the first example, where I said that you're running a bakery company. Now imagine you have different kitchens, okay, or different rooms wherein you have different warehouses. You're storing your products and your kitchen machines, your utensils and everything. And you have a control room wherein you have a CCTV, and your control room, you have a specific manager to manage all those machines and all those rooms and all those kitchens. And he has been asked you, he called you for to migrate or to move these kitchens and move these the applications to a new environment. The first thing what you can do is your agentless migration. Okay, wherein you go to that manager and you ask him that get the information from him. Okay, now agentless migration is basically wherein you do not need any agent or any helper in the source machines. Okay, that is your agentless migration. Next, we come to an agent-based migration. Now, imagine the same setup, but you do not have any manager. Okay, you do not have a control room, but you need to move all those kitchens or all those stuffs which you have in a particular warehouses or your storerooms to a new environment. So what will you do? You will take a help of a helper who will go to an individual room and help you to move those machines or those stuffs to a new environment. That is your agent-based migration. Now, where can you use agentless migration? You can use for VMware and Hyper-V virtualization platforms, and agent-based migration. Of course, you can use in physical servers other than whatever the servers are. You can also use for VM hosted on cloud providers and other cloud providers, your physical servers and all those machines where the virtualization was not enabled. Okay. Next, we'll see the migration activities. We'll definitely move ahead and see all those activities wherein we will be how the Azure Migrate project that needs to be created, the mobility agent, the replication appliance where it comes place, and the pre-migration activities, the cutover things. We'll discuss a detail about the cutover post-migration, and of course, the next step is hypercare. Once you move the migration, move the servers to the new environment, you have to provide the hypercare for a certain period of time.
What's the meaning of hypercare?
Sorry?
What's the meaning of hypercare?
Okay. Hypercare is nothing but, when you move your server, application servers, or, the servers to a new environment for a certain period of time, you, as a service provider, you take care about all the issues or all the, whatever the problems that has been faced or by the application team. So just for an example, if they go there and then they check, they say that, okay, no, the performance is not good as what we had in the on-premise. So at that time, you can take an chance and you can increase the size of the SKU, or you can increase the size of the VM. Or if they say that no, the particular connectivity is not working, you can help them in establishing that connection by allowing the rule in firewalls and NSGs.
One more question.
Yeah.
In the agent-based migration, we have these virtual machines. What kind of virtual machines are they other than VMware and Hyper-V? And doesn't support agent-based migration?
Sorry.
In second one.
Right. Yeah.
Agent-based migration.
Agent-based migration works for any type of virtual machine, any type of physical server. But agentless migration is very specific with VMware and Hyper-V. Right? So ideally, any server can be migrated with agent-based method. Yeah, it's any virtual machine.
The migration scenarios, specifically the three scenarios, what we saw for the assessment, right? The VMware, the Hyper-V, and the physical servers. We'll just have a quick view on the scenarios. In agentless VMware requirements, it uses the Azure Migrate appliance. Now, here you can use the same appliance which you used for the discovery and assessment purpose. You do not you do not require a different appliance or a physical server that needs to be deployed here for the migration. So yeah, that's what we have written, that if you have already set up the appliance for the assessment, you can use the same appliance. And you can scale up to 500 concurrent replications using the Azure Migrate appliance for VMware requirement. For Hyper-V, there is a provision called as replication provider, which is directly deployed on the host, not on a different virtual machine. Okay. So now here, there are no softwares installed on VMs for both agentless, for both VMware and Hyper-V. You do not require any specific software or agent to be installed on the source VMs. Okay. Now it has a very limited space available for Hyper-V hosts, so you can run very limited replications at a time. Now the third scenario, yeah, please.
Is agentless, does it mean you want to migrate the whole VM on the Hyper-V to the cloud, or can you selectively migrate? Like, I want to migrate only 20 VMs from the Hyper-V host. Is it possible to do that?
Yes, of course. See, now when you deploy this appliance, it will push the data of whatever servers you have in your host, right? Then you can, of course, choose and select what you want to migrate. So that option you'll have, definitely. Okay. Now the third, in a physical or the other servers, you have to install a replication appliance. The replication appliance consists of two components. One is your configuration server, and one is your process server. The configuration server is a server which nothing but it coordinates between your on-premise and the Azure. Okay, and the process server is the actual component which replicates your data from your on-premise to Azure. Now you can have a single configuration server. Think it in the manner like it's a supervisor. Okay, and your process server are your helpers who actually carry the data. Like you have different truckloads. Okay, to move your stock from one place to another. Okay, but you require only one supervisor to manage all those trucks, right? So this method, that method can be used to migrate VMware and Hyper-V servers as well, and you can scale it. Based on the number of your workloads, you can scale the process server depending on your requirement. This is a quick comparison between agentless and agent-based migration. So similarly, like agent installation is not required for individual virtual machines. Yeah. So see, whenever you think of an agentless, just remember that you do not require agent on each VMs that is hosted on a Hyper-V or VMware physical server. So that is why we call that component as agentless. Okay, and agent-based, you require a mobility agent to be installed in each and every virtual machines. So there are a few quick comparison, replication priority, test failover, you have rollback parameter. We have a workaround when we used, when we use Azure Migrate agent based. And for pass-through disk and HBA disk, also it is supported in the Azure Migrate agent based method, okay, because it acts as a regular disk. Moving ahead, environment preparation, okay. Do we have time?
We have 11 more minutes.
It's okay. Okay, fine. Okay, with the interest of time, let's have a quick go through all these slides. Let's try to complete the assessment and migration so that we can focus some other thing on the CAF. Okay, the environment preparation. This is a basic environment preparation. See, there is a whole thing if you follow the CAF, that cloud adoption framework. Right from the plan, and between the plan and adopt, we have the landing zone. Okay, so the landing zone preparation. But we'll just touch base here. Whatever we require for moving the application from on-premise to the Azure. Sorry. See, basically you require, this is a basic requirement. You need to have a subscription where your workloads will be moving. Your resource group has to be set up. Your network configuration like subnets, NSGs, firewalls, and if you have any load balancing requirements, that needs to be set up. Your identity and security components, Azure AD rollback, this needs to be defined before you start the migration. And of course, the policies. Azure tags if you want to move ahead for tracking the cost progression. Exactly.
It has to be ready before you start migrating to Azure. So, but this is not what we are going to cover today. So let's skip it and move on to the next slide.
Yeah. So the basic prerequisites for Azure Migrate that needs to be done. So these are Azure Migrate project you require. You require Key Vault and storage account, of course, because to move your disk to the Azure cloud, and you require mobility agents, some permissions. Again, we have covered. Now this is the dashboard. How your Azure Migrate dashboard will look. So you can select the server base, database, and you can see all the discovered servers. Now, when you put the machine, the agentless, you can see all the discovered servers here. Now, after that, you can choose when you go for the replication, you will have an option. To answer your question, you will have an option of which server I need to replicate and which server I need to migrate. So you can have all the data, your Azure VM, and all these things. How many test migrations you have completed? How many migrations you have completed? How many servers are there? And further, you can go ahead from here. So this is how your Azure Migrate dashboard looks. Okay, now just let's have a look because we just had a overview on the components, and this is basically how the architecture of VMware looks like. So your Azure Migrate appliance sits in the middle, which communicates with your ESXi host and your vCenter server and transfer your data to the Azure cloud. And so basically the replication it does, and it stores the data in your managed disk there. Okay, so it communicates through port 443 and it communicates with the port 902 to the vCenter. So we'll have any doubt in this? So this is the same appliance, which is used for the discovery purpose. We can use the same Azure Migrate appliance for VMware. When it comes to Hyper-V, so you have a Hyper-V replication provider. Okay, basically we can use the Hyper-V replication provider, which will be hosted on the Hyper-V host itself. Yeah, see the right side again remains same. Only the component which is installed, which will help you to communicate between the on-premise and the Azure, that will change. And of course, the technology. This is for the physical server or any other server for that matter. Your application appliance sits in between, which communicates between your on-premise and the Azure cloud. Okay, now here comes the role of configuration and process server, which coordinates and moves your data from Azure to Azure from your on-premise data. Okay. So again, a quick comparison of how your VMware servers differ from the Hyper-V servers and from physical servers. Okay, within the interest of time, we'll just move ahead. Okay. So now, as we saw the stages of assessment, these are the stages for migration. Of course, depending upon your organization requirement, you can change like where we need to put the pre-migration checklist specifically, or to check about the readiness. You can definitely change on this. So to start with, the installation of the mobility agent. Now, specifically, the mobility agent is required for the physical servers. When you are doing an agent-based migration, you need to install mobility agent on each and every source machine. Once done that, it goes to an initial replication phase. Okay. Now, when it comes to a agent-less migration, the initial replication uses the mechanism of the platform itself. Okay, platform means VMware or Hyper-V mechanism is being used in the VM snapshot mechanism, and the change block tracking mechanism of VMware is being used. And while in Hyper-V, the VMware, the VM snapshot and the hyper replica mechanism is being used to replicate the data from your on-premise to your Azure cloud. So what happens in initial replication? In the initial replication, basically your VM snapshot has been taken and a complete copy has been copied to the managed disk in the Azure. Okay. Now, once this replication is completed, the replication phase enters to the delta replication phase. Okay. What is a delta replication? Any idea? What is a delta basically?
Data.
Exactly. Correct. See, once the replication is done, because your server or your application, your workload is still in on-premise, right? Till the time it is getting replicated, there will be some changes that will be continuously done on the on-premise. So you need to take care about that as well. So after the initial replication phase completes, it enters to the delta replication, wherein it continuously syncs. Okay, the mechanism, the change block technology or the other mechanism, what it does is it identifies any change that has been done since your initial replication has been completed. And it identifies that change, it identifies from the replication cycle, and it pushes the data on an intermediate basis. Now in mobility agent, wherein we using for the physical server, it is near real time. Okay, it is very quick and it sends data quickly. So once your delta replication is done, then you can do a test migration. Okay. Now again, a test migration is basically a migration into a sandbox environment. Okay. Wherein you can check, definitely you check everything is okay. You can see your application, your VM is booting. Your allowed SKU, it is spinning upon as per the allowed SKU, and those stuff you can very well check. But the disadvantage is you cannot check the connectivities, because it's a sandbox. It will be a sandbox unless and until you create a whole environment. So basically, the VM related things you can check in the test migration status. Okay. After the testing, you have to clean up the test migration. If you unless and until you clean up the test migration, you cannot move ahead. So once you clean up the test migration, then comes your final delta replication. Final delta replication is nothing but, before we migrate, we have to make sure that everything changes, what all changes we have done in the on-prem, the delta changes that has been taken care here. So we can do it manually also. We can push the final delta replication, and this is the main takeoff button. Okay, the migrate. The dashboard. I'm not sure if we have that screenshot, but the migrate. We have a migrate button, wherein that is the final takeoff. Once you go there, then your VM will be replicated to the Azure cloud. Okay, so once it is done, there are some post-migration checklists. We'll see what all checks we need to do. Then again, that depends upon your organization and upon your environment of the organization. Post-migration checklist that needs to be taken care by respective teams, like monitoring teams, to enable the monitoring. Backup team will do the backup and all those stuffs. And of course, the application sanity testing has to be taken care by the application, wherein he'll do different kinds of tests, and then he can conclude. finally, you have to stop the replication because in the portal, it will show you can go to just stop the replication and that completes your migration. Okay. So within the interest of time, any doubt in the process of migration? I know it was very quick. Just to, if you have any questions, we can take, or we can move ahead and then we can take the questions at the end, right? Okay.
Can stop the Teams meeting, or Teams meeting we have to stop, or it will continue? Oh.
Okay, these are the basic checklists, some questions which or the tick marks that needs to be taken care. See, these are very limited. Now, based upon the organization or based upon the customer, this may be short or this may be, very lengthy as well. A few customers or few clients, what we have worked, we have a lengthy of like around 25 to 30 list that has to be checked. This has been checked, this has been checked, this has been checked before we do the migration. So some of the simple plans are, checking the login user account within the on-premise or creating a VDI and giving him the permission to access the VM once it is being migrated to Azure, or local account has been added or not, password change has been done or not. In case OTP disablement has been done, that has to be taken care. Notification to respective stakeholders or the outage banner has been displayed or not. These are some of the pre-migration. And post-migration, of course, as I already mentioned, enabling the monitoring, enabling the backups, or checking if the encryption has been set or not for the disk. Okay, proper tags has been applied or not. Yeah.
I would say this is like cloning. We are cloning the on-prem to Azure. Yeah, the same because some application has the application service and database service on the same server.
Right.
So in that case, it's like a cloning. All the configuration.
Exactly. This is basically the rehost. When you do the rehost, it is like just you're lifting the box from here and you are placing it into the Azure. Yeah. So these are some post-migration activities that has been taken care by a respective. Yeah, sorry.
Suppose I have two VMs on Azure in the same availability zone, zone 1, and would like to move one of the VM to another availability zone, zone 2. Can this be done by Azure Migrate or any other way?
To move the, so if I'm understand the question right, they are already in Azure. Both the VMs are already in Azure. And
to move one of those VMs from zone 1 to zone 2 with Azure Migrate. Would that be possible?
No, I don't think so. It is possible from Azure Migrate, and neither it is possible directly to move to the availability zone. Of course, that there must be a workaround.
Not the VM, like the VM stays in that availability zone, but then you have the backup and restore right method you have, and then there is this disaster recovery method also available, zonal disaster recovery. Right, there is a feature that can be utilized, which replicates your disk to the other zone, right? And in case of disaster, you can just switch over and create a compute in that particular availability zone.
We're going to create another VM in zone 2.
Yeah, we will not do it, but then it is done by the service itself. The service will just continuously, once you enable the DR, zonal DR, the service will basically keep replicating your storage. And once you want to switch, you have to activate it. You have to take some steps basically, and then it will automatically create the configuration compute based on your defined config. I just one example, but I think the simplest of all is that take a snapshot.
Exactly.
Move to the other zone.
Exactly. So it is as good as taking a snapshot and creating a VM, a new VM with the same snapshot in the other availability zone. Give the same IPs and same configuration.
But at the end of it does the same thing, right? It replicates your virtual storage to the target environment. You shut down your source. You bring up your target environment, and you can achieve that using a snapshot. Okay. All right.
Okay. So all right. So these are the challenges and risks. I mean, of course, it will be shared. And with the interest of time, I would like to thank everyone for attending this session.